Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I am Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. And we're here today to talk about recap of last week's NFL action, Week 7. We'll give a little preview about the World Series and a recap of or very brief recap anyway, of the League Championship Series games. And then we'll preview Week 8 in the NFL and provide our new locks of the week that are less locks for one of us than the other recently. Mike, the Week 7 was a total disaster for me, at least anyway. Did you enjoy the chaos of last week's NFL? The lots and lots of upsets, weird games. Or did it drive you crazy like it drove me crazy?
I think maybe our own podcast slash YouTube channel was it was affected last week and it didn't record all the way. Maybe that was a harbinger of things to come, that the week was going to be a little bit screwy and crazy. And this was also the week, it's like we had a lot more we had quite a few more viewers than sometimes. And then they've picked up and watched the re-aired episode that didn't end after 15 minutes, or just had 15 minutes of us doing, staring with our mouths agape. But yeah, I you found it really bizarre. I guess I did come to think of it, but I think it's your mentioning of it was really what caused me to think it was a weird week. So I didn't think it was that weird, but I enjoyed the week mostly. The thing I disliked the most was the Cleveland-Indianapolis game, because I was not in Kansas City and we were scheduled to watch the Chiefs-Chargers game, but everywhere else in the country got stuck watching the horrible it ended up being a close game, but it was a close game because it was horribly officiated, and nobody wants to watch the Browns because of Deshaun Watson. He actually went out though, but like it was Brown, and then it was also Gardner Minshew led Indianapolis, so it wasn't Anthony Richardson that people might be wanting to tune into. So and it was this horrible end of the game drive that made the game last about 15 or 20 minutes longer than it should have. Because the game
was already 15 or 20 minutes longer than it should have been.
It was because it was so high scoring and just so slow. Yeah. So many penalties were called, and then all these penalties were called on the final drive when really Indianapolis stopped Cleveland, and that was it. They recovered a Cleveland fumble, and they should have won. But there was some phantom penalty, and then a series of other penalties that gave Cleveland a touchdown. And then, of course, there was a little bit of time left after Cleveland scored the touchdown. So now we have to watch and see Indianapolis, who we know isn't going to make a field goal to win the game, but we still have to tune in and watch that. And then also we have to wait till the end of the game and hear, the post-game wrap-up on the field from who knows, the sideline reporters that nobody cares about. And then we have to go to a commercial. And then by the time we get to the Chiefs game, we are 15 minutes. We're almost at the end of the first quarter of the Chiefs game. This game was supposed to start at almost 4:30. So the idea was, well, it'll start so people can catch the beginning of it, rather than it's not a 4:05 start, it's a 4:25 or 4:30 start. And it didn't work out that way. And CBS should be I don't know. Somebody should be fired for that blunder. And it was
what is it to do with CBS? That's straight the league's problem.
The league,
because the game, there's no reason that a game should last that long. It wasn't even an overtime game.
CBS added about 8 more minutes of crap that we didn't need at the end of the game. Like that's
because it was already 40 minutes too long.
That's true, but we don't need to. We don't need to see more shots of Deshaun Watson smiling and clapping as his team wins. Nobody wants to see that. Like, people complain about Taylor Swift being shown too much. We have Deshaun Watson being shown way too much when he's not playing. Like, nobody wants to see him. Just he's not playing. We're happy about that. He's not playing. And, he got pulled out of the game, maybe because it was sort of a concussion, but also because his shoulder. Hope he's out again. I hope I really want the Browns to sink, because I think the Browns were kind of a lovable team, but then the Deshaun Watson contract has really soured me on them. So
Yeah.
I and did you see the Indianapolis helmets? They were like wearing black helmets. Did you see that
Makes
last
no
week? It
sense.
was so bizarre. Maybe they deserve to lose too. But
Yeah.
that was what upset me the most about last week. So that was, to me, that was bizarre and strange. But
Well,
the
what was
games,
worse about that game, though, since we were still talking about that, was they did not get the 2-point conversion to cover the spread, though, either, which is what was
I
even
still,
more annoying for me, at least.
yeah, I still covered because I picked Indianapolis to win that game outright. So
Yeah,
I lost it on the money line. I think I picked the over in that game,
you
and
did.
I should have won. I should have swept that game,
When it
but
was nearly double the over, not just
yeah.
did it hit the over,
Well,
but nearly
I
double
think
over.
people overestimate the Browns defense. I don't think the Browns have a good defense. I think the Browns they have the benefit of playing, some NFC North teams that aren't very good. They have, in terms of offensive production, Cincinnati hasn't been very good this year. Baltimore is always spotty when it comes to offense, and Pittsburgh is not an offensive team. So like all the division teams aren't that great. And then
Yeah,
um, so in terms of offense, they're good defensively, and I think they're maybe good teams overall, but they don't score a lot of points. And I think Cleveland's defense, it's fine, but it's not like Miles Garrett is very good, but I,
yeah.
I don't know if their secondary is that great or their linebacking core is just front four is pretty good. But
But their defense has been pretty good this season. And the last team that you'd expect to score a lot of points against them is probably Indy, though.
well,
And
I
both
thought
scored a ton of
I thought
points.
Minshew was a better quarterback, at least for now, than Richardson. So I thought the offense would do
Yeah,
better.
but you'd think that maybe Indy
Jonathan
would
Taylor's
score like
back.
20 points, and then with Minshew, maybe they score 24 points, something like that, right? Not
Yeah,
38. This is crazy. Like
yeah, that was the scoring was higher than I expected. I think the over under, what was the over?
high to the point where it's like, what does any of it mean though? Like, are either these teams actually good, or
No,
are either of the teams bad, or is it just like bizarre insanity that you just have to write off as just being a weird week with weird officiating and strange circumstances?
Yeah,
What do
the
you
over
take from it
under
then?
was 40.5. So I thought like you, I thought maybe it would be a 24-21 game, something like that. So it was going to go over. But I think part of it also is that an NFL game, even though I think the better team usually wins in the NFL, it's not that different from the 17 game stretch in football is not that different from a 17 game stretch in baseball. And we wouldn't, and so like sometimes the teams that make the playoffs are not the best teams that year, and they just happen to have kind of been hot at the right time. And
Yeah,
had they played 17 instead of playing 17 Sundays, if they had played 17 Mondays, maybe they would have had a completely different record against those teams. I think some teams are clearly very good, some teams are clearly very bad, but those middle teams, I think, and even a bad team, I think, can sneak into the playoffs every
yeah,
once. Like I think the Giants last year were not a good team, and they got into the playoffs and actually won a playoff game.
yeah.
Um,
But you kind of expect though sometimes, like, if a bad team wins a game, it's not surprising. But when a bad team that like has like a terrible offense suddenly scores a bunch of points and beats another team that like has a good defense, that happens. You start to wonder like how does this even possible? Like somebody like New England, they had multiple 30-point losses in a row, and then somehow score 29 points and beat Buffalo, who's supposed to be a good team on both sides of the ball. How do you explain, that? And it happens in the same week as this other,
yeah, I
ridiculous
think
game
that's
with Cleveland Indy. I mean, in a typical week, you'd say like, oh, there's a couple upsets, like, whatever. But there were like 8 or 9 games that like really made no sense at all.
yeah. The Belichick usually has something planned for Buffalo, and Josh Allen hasn't always been able to figure Buffalo out. So maybe
Yeah.
that's it.
You have something planned for Buffalo and then being able to score like more than 4 times
Yeah, well,
is
they scored a
weird. It's
lot.
weird.
Usually, Buffalo just holds. It doesn't score any points against New England, and so like,
Yeah.
remember that game where like Mac Jones threw 2 passes and they beat the Bills because of the weather. Like was that 2 years ago, maybe, or it wasn't last year? I don't think it was maybe the year before last. And so I don't. Also New England is the only team in the AFC East to have won against each of the other AFC East teams.
Oh,
So somehow New England might be sitting pretty if it gets close at the end, and they could maybe somehow sneak and win the division or have a tiebreaker that's very advantageous for them. But then out of the division, their tiebreaker is probably going to be very terrible because they've lost all the out of division games, but they've won
right.
all. I think they're 3-0 in the division, right? No, wait, no, they're yeah, no. Actually, they have to. If they win in Miami, they'll be 3 and
They only
1.
they only have 2 wins, right? Are they two
They're
and
two
four?
and one. They're 2-1 in the division. So
Well,
if they
but two
beat
and four
Miami,
overall, though, right? Isn't that
yeah, two
or
and
two?
four, I guess.
Yeah, 2 and 4,
If
two
they
and five.
beat my 2-5, if they beat Miami, which we don't think will happen, but Mostert may be hurt, Tyreek Hill may be hurt. Tua is always
2 and 5. They're 2 and 5. Yeah.
Tua is on a knife's edge of being hurt or not. Also, I think I'm sure the Dolphins are looking ahead next week to the Chiefs in Germany,
Right.
and I could see possibly this is one of my bets, but if I had to pick an upset outright winner, I could see New England beating Miami outright, and I would say that actually bodes poorly for the Chiefs because I didn't think the they'd get the best shot against Miami if that happens.
And Miami came off of a really terrible performance against Philly week 7 too. What did you think anything of that game in particular? Were you surprised that Philly? I don't know how many times did they run the tush push brotherly shove play in that game? Was it
More than I cared for? I can't remember how many times. It was 6 maybe at least.
something like that? Yeah, it was crazy.
It
It's too
was
many.
crazy. They
Once is too many, but
yeah. This is probably Philadelphia's best game. It seems like because they really locked down on other than like that one touchdown to Tyreek Hill. The Philadelphia defense really hung in tough against Miami. Miami had a pick 6 too, so like 7 of their points were defensive. So it was really like a 31-10 game almost. So yeah, I think maybe it also other than a couple early turnovers was a pretty good game for Hurts, but yeah. But I think if you pressure Tua, he's not as good. He just needs Tua has time to throw, and he's not like afraid of getting walloped, which I think rightfully so. He has a little bit. He's probably a little bit skittish because of his injury past. I think pressure on Tagovailoa is the way to beat Miami. And I think the Philadelphia front four is really good. So maybe if the Chiefs want to do that, that's probably what they'll have to do in 2 weeks.
a couple other weird games too. How did the Bears manage to score 30 points with backup quarterbacks against a Raiders team who looked like their defense had been playing pretty well as of late, maybe establishing themselves as a sort of defensive team? Suddenly gives up 30 points to the backup quarterback Bajent, right?
Yeah, I think maybe they're a defensive team by default because their offense is so terrible, and because Josh McDaniels has no he's, as you said, as you have thought before, he was the worst coaching hire 2 years ago, and is probably maybe the worst coach left in the league. It's a toss up between a few different guys, but I think McDaniels is up there, and it seems like from what I have read and heard that McDaniels probably will be around next year no matter what because of his contract situation. So he might get another year even if they're terrible. I am I don't know what to say about the Bears. Tyson Bagent is a Division II prospect out of Shepherd University in West Virginia, which is about maybe 2 hours from where I am, and it's I maybe he is a diamond in the rough. I don't know. Maybe he is, somebody. I don't. Has there been a solid Division II quarterback?
Was he drafted then?
No.
He was fully undrafted, was he? Wasn't he?
I don't know. He might have been a 7th round pick or something, but
I think he was. I think they made some comment about him being the first undrafted quarterback to win a game.
He was the Harlan Hill Trophy winner, finished first one time and third another time. So he was the Division II Heisman winner. He
Yeah.
was drafted free agent. He has some good. He's good size. He's 6'3". He has a 36-inch vertical, which is pretty good for a quarterback. Not super fast, but he's not very mobile. He's more of a statue back there. But I don't know. I guess he's got a good arm, and he was able to maybe this maybe is also an indictment against the Bears offense for not really highlighting the strengths of Justin Fields. Maybe their offense is more tailored toward a Brock Purdy type of quarterback, which is sort of what Bagent is.
Yeah.
Not a Trey Lance quarterback, which is sort of what Fields is. And maybe that's the issue there. I don't know. Yeah, that was shocking. I did kind of think the Bears might win because I didn't think it really mattered that much who their quarterback was, and I thought that the Raiders were going to struggle because they're terrible. So I did get that one right. I think in my picks, at least in my mind, I picked the Bears to. So maybe I was just thinking of. I got the money. I picked the Bears on the money line and the Bears to cover.
Yeah, you
That
did.
time. So I didn't get the over under because that was a lot higher again. But so I was maybe on some of these weird games. I happened to I was prognosticating on this. I mean, that's why I thought it wasn't as weird as you did. Because it seemed like we agreed on most things. Neither of us did super well this week, but we, you know. But I guess on some of the games, I happened to do a little bit better and pulled ahead of you for this week,
Yeah.
and it really showed in our locks of the week. Do you want to talk about that?
No, but let's go
My
ahead and
my
do it.
my dominating performance.
Yeah.
So I was 3-0 for my locks of the week, and I believe you were 1-2
That's
this
right.
week. So could be worse. But so what you want to talk? Do you want to talk about your winner first? Do you want to talk about your losers first?
I don't care.
Well, I can't do anything but talk about my winners.
I
So
know.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll talk about my first winner. Two of them involved teams from the NFC North, the Bears division. Since we were talking about the Bears, and we're talking about the Bears Raiders, let's talk about the other intra conference matchup between the NFC North and the AFC West, and that was the Green Bay Denver game. That was an over under of 45, and I think Green Bay's finally starting to look like that pumpkin I thought they were at the beginning of the
Yeah.
season. And they had a couple of good games, but I don't think Jordan Love's that great. I don't think without Aaron Rodgers, I don't think the offense is very good in Green Bay. I don't think Matt LaFleur is a good offensive coach, even though he's known as an offensive kind of guru. He was the offensive coordinator for Tennessee Titans and other teams that are not known for their offense. So I don't I never thought they always even with Rodgers, their offense was always kind of pedestrian, I thought. And so now with a quarterback who's not a Hall of Fame quarterback, they're not going to score a lot of points. And Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, to put it mildly, haven't gelled yet, we might say, in terms of their production. So, but I thought Denver might pull it out because I think Denver's defense is better than against Green Bay than Green Bay's defense would be against Denver. So I think I picked Denver to win that game, but I also picked it to be an under. And that was one of the games where I actually swept all three, but I picked under 45, and that game was 19-17, so it was 36, so pretty comfortably under. Even a touchdown at the end would have kept it under for me. So I was pleased with the low scoring affair at Mile High. It was almost the exact same score as the Raiders Denver game in week 1, where I think Denver 17-16. So Denver got an extra field goal and rather than lost that one. But I thought, I think the Raiders, the Bears, the Broncos, and the Packers are all kind of bad teams that are about the same level. So maybe that's why I went with the under there. How about your
It was pretty comfortably under too. It was what 36, like a whole
36?
touchdown plus another score.
Yeah,
So you weren't sweating that game at the wire.
no,
You were
it
still
wasn't.
pretty fine. And then you know
Yeah,
Green Bay has the ball to like make a drive at the end and maybe take the lead. You're not worried about them tying it, sending it to overtime. That wasn't going to happen because it was a 2 point differential. So yeah, as a bettor, that was an easy game for you to not actually watch, but watch the score.
yeah, it was one of those things. I guess luckily we weren't playing in the XFL or one of those leagues where you could choose your extra point, whether you want it to be a 1, 2, or a 3.
Yeah.
That could have maybe gotten to the 9 point score, but yeah, it was. So yeah, I was most of my games were pretty comfortable. I felt like for uh maybe the last game I'll talk about, the third game, the NFC East matchup where I made my pick between the Giants and the Commanders, looked good at the beginning and then kind of looked scary, but then turned out to be okay.
Yeah.
But how about your first pick of the week?
My first pick of the week was the one game that I think went more or less how we expected it to, except for one thing at the very end, Mike. There was no ARG time in the Chiefs Chargers game.
Wasn't
I think you and I were texting during this game, and I started making a joke about how it was with 11 minutes to go, time to slow it down. It's going to be the Andy Reid special to write out the game. And then they scored another touchdown and to put the game comfortably ahead. But unfortunately, I had the under in that game at 48.5 points. And the final touchdown with the extra point pushed it half point over. Is that right?
so you had it was 47.5.
47.5. Oh,
Okay, yeah,
that was the final. Oh, wait, Mike. The pick was made earlier and the pick was at 48.5. So I actually got that one right.
you got that one right. Okay, so you're 2-1 in the week.
I didn't even see that. I looked at the big board, which had updated updated odds from the picks of the week.
Well, this is why we go through these on the air so we can see
Yes.
we can correct our mistakes even so congratulations, Dr. Scaff. You're 2-1 in the week. You had a
In
win.
the green on the week.
So our locks of the week have been pretty good. We were 5 out of 6 on our locks of the
There
week
we go.
then.
Now we were, yes. Wow,
And
that is a surprise to see
we
that.
lost a significant amount of money by betting on every game, over under, every game, spread, every game, money line. But our locks have done pretty well this past week. So maybe it wasn't as strange a week as you thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, 48. It seemed like the ARG system, the Andy Reid gentlemanly home stretch, was actually put into place early in the second half when the Chiefs just stopped scoring points when they had scored points so easily.
Yeah.
But some of those points, one of them was like that Blake Bell pass that was obviously,
Fumble that wasn't a catch. That was
yeah, like, he didn't
yeah.
even have the ball by himself or do anything with it. So like, I don't see how they could have thought it was a catch,
Yeah.
but they did. And then the Chiefs, I was happy they scored that touchdown. Was that a Pacheco rushing touchdown?
It was. Oh, what was the last one? Yeah, I think so.
Pacheco rush. Yeah. The Pacheco passing touchdown, I guess, receiving touchdown, I guess, because it was Mahomes threw 4 touchdown passes. So I guess it
Yeah.
was Pacheco reception.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
he went into the end zone. He didn't slide at the one.
There were like 6 minutes left or something, I think. So like it would have been too early, even for the Chiefs. Although probably Reid would have liked just to have a 10-point lead rather than a 14-point lead.
3 minutes to go. No.
Okay.
It was just under 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Or just over 3 minutes.
Over 3 minutes. Okay, I knew it was outside the 2-minute warning. It was in the middle of the fourth.
3:30 was the touchdown pass. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, he didn't slide at the one or do any of that, because that's kind of what you might have guessed that he would do right after.
Yeah, I'm so glad he didn't, because that made it easy at the end for the Chiefs to win, because it needed. Then also, even if he had slid and the Chiefs had just gotten a field goal, it would be 10. But then on that drive where Herbert, they needed 2 scores, Herbert might not have been so desperate. He could have just gotten a field goal first and then the onside kick trying to get a touchdown. But he threw it deep and got the last interception for the Chiefs to kneel down. So they got the kneel down like Reed likes, but they also got the comfortable win like we like to see. We don't want to stress every final.
But it was also good to see the new players that just joined the team for their first game this season, at least anyway, for KC. They both like contributed a lot on the game with McCole Hardman and Charles Minihue on the defensive side. They were both like really integral to the game. That was nice to see them contributing so quickly, at least anyway. Because Minihue had a nice tip pass that ended up being an interception that stopped the drive early in the second half.
He had a sack too, I think.
And a sack even before that. And Hardman had that nice punt return that set them up to score that final touchdown, and then caught a pass to complete a first down on that same drive that looked like the drive could stall.
That was a big catch. I think Hardman, in some ways, that wasn't his fault. Was the Mahomes tried to force it to him earlier, and that's when Mahomes threw his interception and he tried to throw deep to Hardman. I think he could have seen it would have been another maybe big Valdez-Scantling gain if he had looked the other side of the field rather than. I think this is Mahomes. I think really wants to get all of his receivers involved and I think really wants personally for them to succeed. And sometimes I think that gets a little bit of the best of him every once in a while. Although it's usually a good thing. It's a little bit like Andy Reid. I think he's very loyal as well to his guys, and so. I think Mahomes really wanted Hardman to get a big play and forced a pass where he probably shouldn't have, and should have taken a different approach to get maybe an easier gain or touchdown even. But Mahomes played really great. Hardman was good. Minihue, I think also maybe that bodes well for Chris Jones, because now there's somebody who's on both. He could be the interior or the outside, just like Jones, and somebody that maybe they can't just double and triple Chris Jones all the time now, because that happens. I mean, he's or Karlaftis or Mike Dana, one of the other guys could have a big day.
Yeah, the defensive line is pretty set, and then I think we were maybe hoping that the Chiefs may try to pick up Frank Clark.
Yeah, he ended up going to Seattle, which made sense. I think the Chiefs ended up getting Mike Pennell and adding him to the practice squad. Pennell had been on the Chiefs a couple years ago. He was a big run stuffing guy. I think probably Clark, when they brought him back, there probably wasn't room for him on the roster, probably only on the practice squad, and that's probably why he went to Seattle.
Yeah,
I think this is maybe the biggest cause for concern though was going to be the loss of Nick Bolton in that game when he dislocated his wrist, which I'm not quite sure what they mean by it's one of the bones in his wrist was dislocated, because you have a lot of little bones in your wrist hand area.
I don't know
if that was what it was, but
sound like he needed surgery though, so he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, I guess, something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, maybe you can give him a cast or something, but fortunately, the Chiefs linebacker core is pretty deep, especially with Tranquil added from the Chargers. And when Bolton was out earlier in the season, Tranquil did very well. So I think Willie Gay had probably his best game of the season last week too. So Gay, Bolton, Chenal, those three I think are pretty good at holding down the fort, especially with an improved defensive line. And also I think the secondary has been good too. This was probably maybe McDuffie's worst game, but still it didn't end up mattering too much because the rest of the guys were pretty good. So the defense is like, this is one of the things also we talked about before. The defense usually doesn't start getting good until the end of the season. They've started getting good really right from the very beginning this year. So this seems like almost like a New England Patriots type team where Brady, there's a good offense, but there's also a very solid defense, and it's even if one of the units is off, maybe the other one can cover for them. Yeah, no, that's
If you can do it, if you can manage that, to have that, that's, I think, the best scenario as a football team, is to have a good defense and then also a good offense.
I think if you have to pick one, I'd rather have a good offense. But if you have both, that's obviously better. But a good defense can only take you so far if the offense can't score points.
Yeah,
I think good
it's
offense
just so much more pressure on that defense.
Yeah. Because you can get to the Super Bowl, I think, even with just a good offense, which the Chiefs kind of have done before with a middle of the road defense, at maybe charitably middle of the road defense. And so so this was a game I thought the Chiefs kind of looked like the Chiefs of old, where they passed it downfield. They were able, Mahomes threw for 400 something yards. This was I think maybe having Hardman there opens things up, and Rashee Rice seems to be coming into his own now too. So as maybe for the youngest receiver, he's been better than Sky Moore was at this point for sure last year.
Yeah, and just because his last name is Rice, I know you and I have been looking week by week at Rice versus Rice in their first X number of games. And
yes.
Rashee's pulling ahead now a bit, Mike, through 7 games of their careers. Rashee has 10 more catches than Jerry Rice had. Would you have guessed that?
10 more. Wow, that's
26 to 16.
Well, he's got a maybe. Well, Jerry Rice didn't have a very good quarterback throwing to him. It was only this guy named Joe Montana. So maybe
middling at best, right?
Yeah, so they both have been fortunate to have very good quarterbacks on their team.
Through 7 games, yes, Rashee is ahead in receiving receptions, yards, and touchdowns, Mike. All 3.
Well, clearly he's going to be a better player than Jerry Lee Rice. I looked him up. I was thinking if he was a Gerald or just a Jerry or a Gerard, but he was or Jerome. He's Jerry Lee Rice. He's 61 now. He just turned 61 about 2 weeks ago. So because we had talked about him, what would he be like on a team now? Because he's in these commercials. He looks like he's just Jerry Rice. Still, he looks like he's in phenomenal shape. So I bet he could be probably a possession receiver. Hunter Renfro type. Renfro hasn't had a very good season, but that kind of player. He could be a Wes Welker sort of Julian Edelman kind of possession receiver, I bet, at this point.
Yeah. Just hopefully not with the concussions that those guys ended up with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Maybe it's like Travis Kelce. He's getting older and older. Maybe he can keep doing things. He had it was his best game this season too, by far. And so he hasn't been distracted by the Taylor Swift sideshow, which not that it's either their fault, but the media following them around. And it seems like Taylor has fit in very well on the Chiefs sideline or in the box where they sit with Donna Kelce or Brittany Mahomes. They've seemed like they're all happy getting along. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andy Reid seems to be fine with it too. So he has invited her back.
Yes.
To any game that she wants to come to. That's what it sounded like. Yeah.
So maybe she'll be in Denver.
I guess we'll find out this Sunday afternoon. Right? Yeah. Afternoon? Yeah, late afternoon game again, right?
It's a 4:00 game. It's not national. It's not a national TV game because Denver's so bad, but it's a late game because all the games in Denver are late because they're going to have a
time zone wise. Yeah,
they're going to have an 11 a.m. game in Denver. Speaking.
How was your second pick? Yeah.
Let's do a second pick. My second pick was a good one. This was in Minnesota, where I actually picked Minnesota to cover. And one of my bets, I decided, well, why don't I just go pick them on the money line as well to beat San Francisco. So it was Minnesota +7. I thought that Minnesota would keep it close, and at home, the Chiefs only beat Minnesota, I think, by 7 in their building. I think Minnesota is a better team than their record indicated. At the very beginning of the season, when I picked every single game, I had predicted that this would be a Minnesota win against the 49ers. I actually predicted the Chiefs to lose at Minnesota. A couple turned out to be a win, but that was I thought Minnesota was going to be tough to beat at home. And Deebo Samuel was hurt, didn't play. He might be out for a while, right, with his shoulder fracture. As I guess
Possibly,
his scapula, I guess, was fractured.
yeah.
It's hard. I don't think it was a separated shoulder. They said a fracture. So
I don't know.
and McCaffrey was kind of those are two of the best players on the 49ers, but those are also two of the players that are frequently injured on the 49ers. So I thought, well, maybe they aren't quite as healthy as they want to be. So I thought, it's a second road game in a row across the country for the 49ers. So I thought, well, maybe, if Minnesota could at least keep it close, and they did more than that. They won the game, and they made Brock Purdy kind of look not so good for second week in a row. So that's maybe he might not even play next week because he is in the concussion protocol. I think that was not during the game, but maybe in practice. I'm not sure when that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, the Vikings won, and so I moved to 2 and on my betting picks. Yeah, they won 22-17. So it was a low scoring affair, but
that was another of the games that I thought made no sense. Because even with the Kirk Cousins primetime game, that should have been a flop.
Yeah. Cousins has been okay in prime time this year. He played a good game against the Eagles earlier. They didn't lose they had to play a close game. So I do think primetime Kirk Cousins is actually kind of a myth. It's just that he doesn't play that many games, and so the Vikings aren't always a primetime team. So you get his mistakes there get magnified, and usually they're a 1 o'clock window team or 12 o'clock window, I guess, in the in an Arrowhead time, or what is the state? What is the Vikings stadium called?
Whatever, yeah. I don't even know what it's called now. I don't even know.
The Dome, the new Dome. But
I'm very distracted. The high school football stadium that's about 2 blocks away apparently is doing the national anthem right now, and it sounds like a theremin basically. So it's like it's very
theremin.
Strange. It's just the pitch that's coming the 2 blocks through a wall. That's what it sounds like. Yes.
Maybe Bill Shatner is the guest of honor.
It could be. I cannot.
Olathe, do you know which high school it is in Olathe? Olathe, what direction?
Northwest.
Olathe North. Is Olathe Northwest now?
I think so. Yeah.
That's too many.
But it's like a big complex that lots of schools use it, I think. So I don't know that it's necessarily that one school's thing.
I think we may have played. If it's that complex, I'm thinking of we played soccer there at one point when I was in high school at this giant Olathe sports complex. But
anyway,
how about your second pick, Dr. Scaff?
My second pick was what I thought was the one win, but it turned out to be my second win. I had Arizona, Seattle under 44.5. That game did turn out to be a pretty defensive struggle type game. Seattle ended up winning 20-10, staying full 2 touchdowns under the line. So I'm happy with that.
Under. Yeah, my another game that would have been good to bet the under on was the Giants Commanders game. We both bet the over on it, unfortunately, but I did bet that the Giants would cover. They were 3-point underdogs against the Commanders. I don't think the Commanders are any better than the Giants, especially with Tyrod Taylor as quarterback for the Giants. They're not too terrible, but they won this game when they lost a game very similar to that in Buffalo last week, but a 14-9 game, I think it was, in Buffalo. They should have won that game 15-14 had they not flubbed the clock stuff at the end of each of the halves.
Yeah.
But this game they did beat the Commanders 14-7, so 21 total points in that one. This was a game straight out of 1947, and but I was happy that, and I did pick also. I think I picked the outright Giants win there as well. So this is another weird game where a lot of people I probably picked the other way. So some of the weird stuff I picked correctly. I didn't do that well overall, but I did okay. And on my locks of the week, though, I was 100%. How about your final?
Was that the Giants? Did they have Daniel Jones? Daniel Jones was not available, right? So
Tyrod Taylor.
Okay, yeah. So that was actually maybe better for them that.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Or I didn't think it was going to be any worse. And I thought maybe at least it might be better in terms of getting a better number because people were going to expect the team not to be as good with Taylor. But I think Tyrod Taylor is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league. And he's probably somebody that could be a starter on one of these not so good teams, like perhaps Washington, the team that he played against. Maybe had Jacoby Brissett been starting instead of Sam Howell, it might have turned out differently. But
maybe
New York, the G-men covered and won outright for me. How about your final pick, Dr. Scaff?
Final pick was our one failure of the week. Then I had Detroit +3 at Baltimore, and that was about as far away as possible from
I thought that was a good pick too. But yeah, it was
Baltimore somehow figured out how to score again and scored a lot. It was 38-6 was the final. So I only missed that one by about 35 points, Mike.
This might have been Lamar Jackson's best
5
game
touchdowns
in 2 years. It was really good for him. So maybe he has found an answer to some of the defenses, but it might have just been a really bad game by the Lions and a really good game by the Ravens. I think the Ravens are a good team, and I think the Lions maybe aren't quite as good as people thought they were, but 38-6 is still very surprising.
Just to clean up one thing that we talked about earlier, US Bank Stadium.
US Bank Stadium.
Minnesota Vikings.
That's right. Should we talk a little about baseball before we talk about this week's action?
Let's do it.
What do you think? So we are at the World Series now. The unlike the wild card series, the divisional series, we had series going their ultimate
full distance.
They're the longest possible distance. 2 7-game series. We had the Texas Rangers defeat the Houston Astros 4-3, and then we also had the Diamondbacks 4-3 over the Philadelphia Phillies. Are you happy about this upcoming World Series? Is there a team you're rooting for?
Well, I think the thing that we both wanted was to make sure that Houston did not make it happen.
Yeah.
And then the other game also, other team joining them doesn't matter, it's fine. Right. As long as Houston didn't make it, I think we were going to be okay with it. And we got that. So I think we're both at least okay with it.
I would have preferred probably Philadelphia with Harper, but and because the Diamondbacks had a record that wasn't very good, probably not worth World Series potential. But I was just thinking, what is it with Houston and their unscrupulous athletes? We had Deshaun Watson, who was, of course, in Houston when most of his indiscretions, we'll just call them that, were committed. And then we also had the Astros. So probably the biggest villains in sports today are both very tied to Houston, but one of the biggest villains, perhaps to many in politics, is also tied to Houston, and that is one Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was, though, vilified because he attended the Astros Game 7, and he was he's senator from Texas, but he's I guess an Astros fan. He's from the Houston area, and the Astros lost. So are you? I know you're not politically very aligned with Senator Cruz. Is this the happiest you've been about something that Ted Cruz has allegedly done?
And by helping Houston not make the playoffs by attending the game.
Yes. He
I
was
mean,
blamed for it.
no, but I mean, it probably is one of the better things he has done, but it doesn't make me happy at all. I don't. No, no, not at all.
No, it
You?
makes me happy. I feel he isn't escaping to Cancun. He's not letting Donald Trump insult his wife. He's
But then
and it's not
supporting Donald Trump, doing
he's not and
whatever
then supporting him
ridiculous thing Donald Trump was.
having a lot of policy issues that we disagree with. Even though we're not talking about politics too much here on Winter Power Hour, but we aren't the biggest Ted Cruz fans. But this actually, I think it's the most I've enjoyed Ted Cruz. Also, his horrible. Have you heard his horrible Mr. Burns impression?
No.
Google that sometimes, viewers. He claims that he's very good at impressions, and he tries to do Mr. Burns. It is the worst Mr. Burns you could ever think of.
Could it be a different Mr. Burns that he's thinking of? Like he doesn't know who
No, he was talking about
Monty
the Simpsons.
Burns is?
No, he was. It's just a very poor attempt at
No,
Mr. Burns
great.
from somebody whose father maybe killed President Kennedy. So,
May or may not have.
or been the Zodiac killer. Was that what it was? It was something. It was one of those things. Yeah,
Yeah.
poor Ted Cruz. I think he is vilified, and he's just not a very. I think a lot of people don't like him either, just because his personality I think is very grating, even to fellow Republicans. He's not one of the most beloved figures in their politics. But
Wasn't very politically stated then. Also, though, that was very cautious how you phrased all of that. And that was
maybe since I'm working for the judiciary now, I have to steer clear of petty partisan squabbles.
yes, nothing inflammatory. All
Nothing
very,
inflammatory.
very carefully phrased. Yes.
Yes. Do you think this week will be as inflammatory as the last week to you in the?
It better not be. But I had one more thing to say
about baseball.
about baseball. Yes. Do you find hope in who the attendees in the 2023 World Series, are? Because 2 years ago, both of those teams were in the bottom three in record. 2 years now later in the World Series, does that give you hope for the Royals?
Maybe. Who was the other team in the bottom three? Was that the Royals?
I don't know. I'm
Maybe
not
in
sure.
Baltimore. It may have been Baltimore. Baltimore was really bad.
Could have
for a
been
while.
Baltimore, yeah.
So they also played really well this year. So it does, I guess, because the Royals did have some really good years after some really terrible years when they won in 2014 and 2015, won the AL pennant, and then won the World Series in 2015. So I think the Royals have some talent. Bobby Witt Jr. is fantastic. I think Michael Garcia might be the real deal. Freddie Fermin turned out to be a pretty good player this year. Maybe some of the other former prospects will turn things around. But Singer might, do a little better. Melendez might play a little better, and some of the other guys are going to come along. So yeah, it's possible. I think the Royals, especially in the AL Central, it's a very winnable division. So
yeah, but it's not just one team that made the World Series that had a bad record 2 years ago, but both of the teams. That's what that was interesting. Anyway.
So we're gonna see
and it was Baltimore that had the other.
Baltimore. We're gonna see
it was tied for the worst record.
We'll see either an A's, Royals, or Rockies World Series in 2 years. Is that what you're predicting? Hopefully, Royals, Rockies, not A's, Rockies.
Yeah. Let's not. Yeah, I don't know.
Worse.
I doubt either of those are likely though. So
I think of those three, I think the Royals are the most likely.
They have a young core. I don't know that Oakland has much of anything they're really banking on going forward.
No, I think
the Rockies, I don't know where they're going either. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, so we'll mark it here first. The Royals World Series 2 years from now.
They're not due for another World Series for another 22 years, I guess, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, it's every 29 or 30 years.
Exactly 30 years that they win.
Well, they had a 1980 and an 85.
But they went, yeah.
So I don't know what they're maybe there's going to be I don't know, a different ratio. But
break that stretch anyway, yes.
Fortunately, though, we have the Chiefs playing very, very well, and the Royals being terrible hasn't been as sad because You know, the Chiefs have been as good or better than the Royals were even in 2014, 2015 for about 5 years now. So we're happy about the Chiefs. The Chiefs played the Broncos again this week. Do you have a prediction, I think, for the Chiefs Broncos as one of your locks of the week, do you not?
I do. Yes, it is one of the locks of the week. Yeah, so I think the Chiefs defense is still pretty solid. I'm not really super worried about Denver's offense still. I think they only threw for 95 yards, I think, the last time they faced KC just a few weeks ago. I do have the Chiefs minus 7.5 at Denver as one of my locks.
I'm always a little shy to bet the Chiefs as one of my locks because you never know when the Andy Reid a gentlemanly home stretch will kick in, and so I find it hard to see that the Chiefs will lose. They've won, I think, 17 games in a row against the Broncos. I don't see why this won't be the 18th.
Yeah,
but I could see them only winning by 6 or winning by 5, but I could also see them win by 20. So I will probably end up being on your side because I don't want to bet against the Chiefs either. But of my locks of the week, I mentioned I was talking a bit about the Minnesota San Francisco game. I ended up putting both of those teams in the lock of the week category this week. I think San Francisco is going to bounce back against Cincinnati. That's probably the marquee game of the week. When you say there's not a lot of really interesting games this week, I think.
Although it is a full slate of games, no buys, so all 6.
That's strange how week 8 has no buys. The Chiefs have a bye after week 9. I think maybe so then week 9 teams will have buys, but they've had buys already. But yeah, those
6 teams were off last week, and now 0 teams off this week. Yeah, it seems like
it's a little strange. I don't know how they do it. And you'd think, well, with every game being played, they could pick some really good games for prime time this week. But we have the Raiders Lions for Monday night, Bears Chargers for Sunday night. That is, I think that's probably.
I think those are games that teams were expected to be pretty good before the season started. Well, 3 of those teams I think are, at least anyway. But
I don't know. Maybe I picked the Raiders to be good. Yeah.
Well, I think that people thought the Raiders were going to be better than last year,
and I think people thought the Bears would be decent.
Yeah.
And the Chargers have gotten. Oh, the only team that's done really well is the Lions, and but
they laid a big egg last week though. So
yeah.
I think if you were picking based on what happened last week, you wouldn't want any of those teams anywhere, maybe even on television at all. Maybe those just give them the buys this week and they just not play.
Those would be moved to
those 4 teams. Take this
Tuesday at 9 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I picked San Francisco to bounce back in against Cincinnati and cover. It seems like Brock Purdy may or may not play, but I think Sam Darnold is a capable backup, and I think it doesn't matter quite so much who quarterback is in San Francisco. We've kind of seen that. Garoppolo has done well. Purdy has done well, and I think Darnold is kind of the same mold as those two. He's less like Trey Lance or a running quarterback than he is like a Darnold is, he was a high draft pick. He is essentially, I think, just a better pedigreed Brock Purdy probably, and so maybe he can be just as good as Purdy, even though Purdy has turned out to have more talent than anybody I think thought that he would. But I like San Francisco to cover the minus 4.5 as it is now. That line might change, go up and down depending on what Purdy's status is. But I believe you have the opposite prediction in that game. You like Cincinnati plus 4.
A very rare occurrence where you and I are actually opposed in our locks of the week. That it happens sometimes, a lot of times in the big sheet when we're forced to bet on every single game. But it doesn't happen too much on our on-air locks of the week where we actually oppose each other. But yeah, I'm taking Cincinnati plus 4.5 at San Francisco. I think Cincinnati's coming off a bye. San Francisco's really banged up, and maybe without their starting quarterback, although may not be much of a drop off, like you just mentioned, to Darnold. Maybe actually an improvement anyway. But there are so many injured players seemingly on the 49ers that with that week off that Cincinnati has, I kind of expect them to be fresher, and maybe their offense will start to wake up a little bit, even though they're playing a pretty good defense in San Francisco. But they've got to be getting a little tired playing some pretty tough games like in a row.
Cincinnati really, really needs this game too, because they have to keep pace in the AFC North, but also they have a tough schedule coming up. They play the Jaguars, they play the Bills, they play the Chiefs, they play the division opponents again. I think they've 4 more games in the division, so they have a lot of pretty tough games coming up. And maybe you can say, well, maybe maybe Cincinnati needs this game more. Maybe Burrow's calf is better after a week of a break. So yeah, I could see that happening. I think that being at home in the Bay Area is gonna help the 49ers. I can't see them losing 3 in a row. So that's maybe why I went with them. But I could see the other one happening too. So it's interesting. Our locks of the week will clash, and we'll see whose lock reigns supreme, whether it's the master lock of Dr. Andrew Scaff or the Yale lock of Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire.
Here we go. Nice.
My third pick is maybe also a little controversial to Dr. Scaff, because this is one of the teams he thinks is one of the worst in the league, but somehow they have a winning record this year, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are 2.5 point 2.5 point home underdogs to the Jacksonville Jaguars, whom I don't think are very good either, but especially on the road, I think the Steelers can keep it close and or win this game. So I like a home underdog that I think is just as good as the visiting favorite. So I like the Steelers plus 2.5. How about your final lock of the week?
My final lock of the week, I've got Houston minus 3.5 at Carolina. Yeah, Houston's been kind of all over the place in the last few weeks, but Carolina has been not very good, I think, in any of their games. So I kind of expect that, at least that trend, to hold solid. Even though I made this realization earlier today about the road favorites being terrible last week, I can't see that trend continuing so heavily.
Week to week, there's no such thing as a trend. So it's up and down.
But it was a full 0 for 7 road favorites.
Road favorites
last week, and 6 of the road favorites outright lost their games.
The only one that won, I guess, was the Browns in that crazy game. They were a road favorite, but they only won by 1, so they did not cover. It was a weird week. We'll see if this week is equally weird in terms of some of those numbers. We're looking forward to the Chiefs game. I think our viewers are looking forward probably to a variety of different games, depending on where they're from. We appreciate their viewership and their listenership, especially dealing with our technical difficulties last week. We're happy to have you, and happy to have you aboard at the Morning Track Power Hour. Should we wrap things up, because we want to keep it a little bit shorter this week, to keep it closer to an hour, and then we'll have our full huge extravaganza next week again at our normally scheduled time. But anything to add, Dr. Scaff?
Just hoping for a not week 7. That's pretty much what it was. Yeah.
By definition, it is a week 8, not a week 7. So it will have to be different. We have all the teams playing, and so we have a full slate of NFL matchups, even if they aren't maybe the juiciest games that we could have imagined. Still, it's going to be a fun time this weekend, starting with the Thursday night game, the Bills and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we'll see what happens with that one. We'll talk about that game and all the other games next week here on the Morning Trek Power Hour. So signing off, as always, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Morning Trek Power Hour. Oh, Esquire, should I add that? Sure. ESQ. JD PhD. And just a mere PhD for Dr. Scaff.
Yeah. So underqualified to be.
You're underqualified for this. Yeah, we need at least 2 or 3 more terminal degrees for each of us
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be co-hosts of the Warning Strike Power Hour.
Yeah.
We have a lot of abbreviations here. WTP, WTPH, things like that. So we're very much part of the initialisms here at the Power Hour. But as always, I'll just call myself Mike Werman. He is Andrew Scaff. We are the Warning Track Power Hour. Please like and or subscribe to our YouTube channel and our and/or our podcast delivery networks. And until next time, we will bid you good day.